evening, everyone. So my name is Alisa, and our group was assigned to discuss about the topic postmodernism and new narrative forms. So what is postmodernism? So it is a literary movement that emerged after World War II. So this means that the postmodernism started after the World War II, where people there started questioning about their traditions and beliefs and what they thought is true, which because of the effect of the war. So it also challenges traditional storytelling and absolute truth, which means that it does not follow the usual way of telling a story, which is ang usual way man dyan is kanang start siya clear beginning, middle, and end. And it also questions that the idea that there is only one true meaning, suggesting that truth can be different for each person. Also, it focuses on multiple meanings, ambiguity, and subjectivity. So postmodernism texts often have more one interpretation. They can be unclear or open-minded, and they depend on personal opinions and each of your interpretations. So we have here the subtopics of it. So these are the ways of storytelling in that era. So we have here the rejection of linear structuralism, fragmentation, and non-linear chronology, metafiction, intertextuality, and reliable narration. So here, so during the postmodernism, it does reject and challenges the linear structuralism wherein the usual linear is actually we have beginning, middle, and end. However, in postmodernism, the events or it is actually not stories are not told in order. So events may jump in time, no clear timeline. The story moves back and forth in time. So next we have here, let's move on to fragmentation and non-linear chronology. So first we have here the fragmentation or broken structure, which means that the story may feel disconnected or scattered. So different parts may not be connected clearly at first, and readers have to piece together the meaning. So we also have here the non-linear chronology, which means broken timeline. Has no clear beginning, middle, and end. It also uses flashback, flash forwards, mixed timelines, and the timeline jumps around. Now let's next is metafiction. So in metafiction, it is a type of writing where the story is aware that it is a story. So this means that it reminds the reader that it is fictional. It breaks the illusion of reality. So the narrator may talk directly to the reader, and characters may know that they are in the story, and the author may insert themselves into the story. So we have here next intertextuality, which means that a text refers to other texts. So it shows how stories, poems, or works on borrowed references such as ideas from other works. Like, for example, you're making a story which kind of reference ka, people have story na, for example, parehas ka ng Romeo and Juliet ka story ka, the same name mo siya, parehas name siya. So that's intertextuality means. So we have here also the last one, which is unreliable narration, which means that the narrator cannot be fully trusted. So from the word itself, unreliable, which means that hindi siya matuguan. So it could be because they are biased, emotional, have limited knowledge, or it could be lie information and hide information. So a narrator whose version of the story may not be true or complete. So that will be all for my part. So next, we have here the sample literary terms of these subtopics from postmodernism. We have here the non-linear fragmented novel, metafiction, labyrinthine short fiction.
As for my part, is non-linear fragmented novel. The story does not follow chronological order. This means the narrative is not structured from the earliest event to the latest event. Instead, it jumps backward and forward in time or present event out of sequence to create specific effects like building suspense, exploring depths of memory, or challenging readers to piece together meaning. For example, The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. It alternates between the 1990s when gay tragedies occur and the 1990s when a character returns to her childhood home, wearing past and present to unpack how the past shaped the present. For number two, events are shown in scattered or disconnected parts. Here the story is broken into fragments. For example, short scenes, different perspectives, or seemingly unrelated episodes that may not immediately connect. The author relies on the reader to identify links between these parts as the narrative unfolds. For example, in Slaughterhouse, five episodes from Billy's life are presented as isolated disjoint moments. For example, a scene of him in hospital bed cuts abruptly to a battle scene in the strength. That only cohere through recording themes like trauma and pain. And for number three, the story moves through different times and moments. That emphasize the narrative's movements across distance, temporal periods, or specific key moments, rather than progressing linearly. It often highlights how events in different times interact or influence one another. For example, 1900s by George Orwell. While set primarily in 1900s, the protagonist Winston Smith frequently drifts into memories for his childhood before the totalitarian regime took control, and fantasies of a future without oppression, creating movements between three distinct temporal space to critique totalitarianism, erasure of the past, control of the future.
So the next part is metafictional novel. A story that is aware it is fictional may directly involve the reader. So it is a book where the story itself knows it is not real. It doesn't try to hide that it was written by someone. Instead, it openly says, I'm just a story. The writer might use words like you, the second person point of view, and speak directly to the person holding the book. It feels like a conversation. It breaks the invisible wall between the writer and the reader. For example, the story about If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler by Italo Calvino. So this is the perfect example because it starts like this. You are about to begin reading Italo Calvino's novel. If on a winter's night, a traveler. Relax, concentrate, dispel every other thought. Why is this metafiction? It's a book. It tells you exactly what you are doing and reading. It uses word you over and over. You are part of it. The story is about trying to read a book, so the story is happening to you while you are reading it. In simple words, imagine you are watching Dora the Explorer. Then suddenly Dora turns to look at you and says, "Can you help me to find this place?" Then, or what is the cave? Look at the map. That's the example of metafictional novel.
Libertine short fiction. So, libertine short fiction from the word libertine. So, So, ang word na labyrinth is mura daw ni siya og maze. Have you seen a maze sa mga movie? Yes. Unsa may ma-observe ninyo sa maze? Ha? Daga daw kagayanan? Yes. So, mao na siya ang kanang kuan labyrinth. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
this type of story is kuan siya, confusing, complex, and full of different parts. Mao na siya. And then it is not just about kanang what happens in the story, but also about the deeper meaning behind it. So, labyrinthine short fiction is not simple or linear story. Instead of following one path, the story will move in different directions, including hidden meanings and require a deep thinking. So, when you are reading, kanang kailangan jud nimo siya sabto dili ra kay sa kanang example lang na kay tatlong sa Mona Lisa gani. Dili ra ka magkuan sa iyang ngano na himo siya aw nga villain siya ba like kana sa kontra siya ba dili na ba dili mo like ang imong kuan ba dili ra ka mag-focus sa kanang iyaha nga kontra siya ba imo sa una-unaon ba kung nganong nahimo siyang kontra. Yeah. So it is called maze-like because readers may feel like they are finding their ways through different ideas, just like being inside a labyrinth. So one important feature is that it has multiple meanings. So this means the story is not limited to one interpretation. So for example, The Garden of 14 Hats by George Louis Borges. So this story can be understood in different ways. So on the surface, it is about a spy trying to escape and complete a mission. But on a deeper level, it is about time, choices, and the idea that reality is not just one straight line. So what is the story all about? The story focuses on Yu Jun, a Chinese spy working for Germany during the war. So by the way, this story happens in World War I. So Yu Jun is being chased by Captain Baden, a British intelligence, who is trying to capture him. So because of this, Yu Jun is in desperate situation. He knows he will eventually be caught, so he must complete his mission before pa siya madakpan ni Baden. So his mission is to send a message to his allies about the location of the target city. One of the most important part of the story is when Yu Jun visits Stephen Albert. At first, we think he's just hiding or asking for help from Albert. But instead, pag abot niya dito kang Albert explains something very important about Yu Jun's ancestor, which is si Chui Pen. Yeah. Si Chui Pen is, si Albert kay study siya sa kanang book ni kana Chui Pen. So Chui Pen tried to create two things, the labyrinth and a book. So people thought nga he failed nga makabuhat og kanang labyrinth. But Albert explains that the labyrinth and the book are actually the same. So the labyrinth is not physically maze.
Init.
Instead, it is
Minifan.
a labyrinth of
Minifan.
time. So this means that time does not move in one straight line. Instead, it branches out in many different paths. For example, Albert explained in one reality, a person makes one choice, but in another reality, the same person makes multiple choices. Instead of So this idea is what makes the story liberating. It is not just about events, but about how reality itself works. So after learning this, Yushun suddenly kills Stephen Albert. So this moment is very shocking. Nanong i-kusiliya si Stephen Albert na informant si Stephen Albert ni explain sa iya about sa work sa iya about sa work sa ancestor ni Yushun. So naay reason nanong i-kusil ni Yushun si Albert. He kills Albert not because of anger, but because he needs to send a message. So the name Albert will appear in the news, and his allies will understand it is the name of the target city. So this shows how actions in the story are not always what they seem. There is always hidden purpose behind it. So this story is a perfect example of liberating short fiction because first, it has multiple meanings. So it is both a spy story and a philosophical story about time. Katong book na Labyrinth at ay book ni book sa ancestor ni Yushun.